to give you a quick walkthrough for the instructions of the annotated bibliography assignment. So we're in Unit 2 now, and we have two projects in Unit 2. Project 3 is the annotated bibliography. Project 4 is the research essay. These two assignments are connected. The research you do for the annotated bibliography, you will use on the research essay. So it's really important that you get started right away on the annotated bibliography, that you do all the steps and all the homework that I've provided, because it's really going to help you have a much more effective and efficient and easier research process. So let's talk about the annotated bibliography. So we have been learning how college-level writing requires you to join a conversation by adding new insights, observations, and information. But as we've seen, you can't join into an ongoing conversation before you listen to the voices already involved. One issue in our contemporary life that can affect joining any conversation lately is the way the truth and facts are understood and sometimes debated, especially those facts or that information presented in online media. Our research project this semester will ask you to learn about the media trends that have led us to what some have called the, quote, post-truth era. You'll consider how the discourse around facts and truth affects a topic of your choice as you design a research question and undertake original research. So as I said, our next two projects are linked. You cannot change topics in between them. You'll first create an annotated bibliography of sources that all speak to a research question of your choice. And after you complete the annotated bibliography, you'll use those sources, along with others, to write an academic research essay to answer the question that you selected. You must complete the annotated bibliography before you can write the final essay. You cannot change research questions or switch to a different topic between the two projects. So for these two projects, the class is going to be focusing on the following topic: how the internet and social media has affected society's understanding of truth and reality. We've already done some readings about this. This is a really big topic, it's a really big conversation, and there's lots of other things that we can talk about related to it. So the issue of truth in the internet often leans towards political issues lately, but your topic does not have to be political in nature. You should think about your own use of the internet and social media. What areas of your life are influenced by the time you spend online? Maybe you watch YouTube beauty tutorials or video game streamers. Maybe you've been drawn to a TikTok trend. Maybe you're interested in a current event topic like global warming, internet privacy, politics, or COVID misinformation. Really, the sky is the limit here, because what we're going to be considering is how that topic has changed or is affected or could have effects because of how people understand facts. So the topic that you choose should be one that you want to learn more about. You'll be doing a lot of reading and research work over the next few weeks. So if you're not interested in the topic, it's going to be painful and you're going to struggle with the assignment. It's much better to pick something that you actually care about. To help provide a background or common language for our discussions, we'll be reading articles about cognitive bias, information, post-truth, and fake news. So we've already read a few of those. We're going to continue to read them and dive into those topics. You can use any two of those sources in your final research project, but the rest of your annotated bibliography should only contain original research. So let's go over the steps and process. It's likely that you've never written an annotated bibliography before. It is not an essay. It's a very specific type of text, and it's for specific reasons. So throughout your college career, you're certainly going to have to do a lot of research. You may be asked to produce a very specific genre of writing called the annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography is a list of relevant, related source citations that include summary and analysis. Researchers and students produce annotated bibliographies to share information, curate sources, and just to organize their own thinking before a research process begins. So here are the instructions. You are going to formulate a research question related to the issue of how the internet and social media have affected society's understanding of the truth. The question should have it should not have a clear, already agreed upon answer. So what we're really looking for here is not for you to already have an idea to prove, but have a question that you want to learn more about. You're going to compile an annotated bibliography of at least 8 sources. 6 of those sources have to come from our library databases. Your annotated bibliography must include 1 reference source, 2 viewpoint or argument-based sources from our databases, 1 peer-reviewed journal article. You cannot use more than 2 general internet sources that you found through like a Google database or search engine. You also need to include a source synthesis overview. It's important to note that all sources must be appropriate for college level work. So if you do decide to include general internet sources that you found through Google, you need to make sure that you are evaluating those sources and that it is in fact an appropriate source for a college paper. So an annotated bibliography is composed of different source entries. Each source entry must, number 1, cite the bibliographic information about the source in MLA format. This is the same citation that you would include in your works cited page at the end of an essay. And you want to include an annotation. The annotation is a summary, evaluation, and analysis. You're going to summarize the source, identifying the main claims, reasons, and providing a description of the major evidence. You're going to evaluate the methods, strengths, and weaknesses of the source. So this should sound familiar. This is very much like what we've already done this semester. And then you're going to think about why this source is useful and appropriate for your specific question and project. After you compile your sources, you'll write a source synthesis overview that will serve as an introduction for your bibliography. And there's instructions about that below. So your annotated bibliography should be directed to an audience of other researchers also interested in the topic. So they're interested in the topic, but they're not necessarily aware of your sources. Please note that the bibliography is required before you can submit the research essay. They must be about the same topic. This is how you show your work for the research essay. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about the research process. The first thing that we're going to do is complete the assigned class readings on the roots of cognitive bias, what is post-truth, and why the last 10 years have been uniquely stupid. These 3 readings are going to give us a language to talk about disinformation, fake news, post-truth, and even cognitive bias, which is a real problem sometimes when we're doing research. These readings are a starting place for understanding these topics and information. As you read these sources, you want to think about your own use of the internet and social media. What topics interest you most? How does the online environment contribute to your own understanding of reality and truth? I mean, you can think of something as simple and ubiquitous as, makeup tutorials. How many people today know how to contour their face and do makeup a certain way because there are so many tutorials that pop up on every reel and TikTok out there that show you how to do this and create almost this reality that this is how people should look, right? So it can be something as simple as like beauty. It can be something as complicated as, COVID disinformation and vaccines. It's really up to you. Pick something that you're interested about. There is going to be a lot of process work and homework assigned that's going to help you explore various topics and find emergent themes. One of the first 3 things that we're going to do are these 3 research activities that is really preliminary research to help you come up with a research question. So you should not have a question yet. You're really going to kind of go through this process where you learn enough to understand what you actually don't know. Whatever question you decide on, it has to have rhetorical exigency. It has to be an open-ended question that you don't already have an answer to, but you do have curiosity about. So there's required coursework that includes homework assignments and process work. It's going to include a general internet survey of the topic and also specific activities that will walk you through how to use some of our library databases to help you focus a topic and find a theme. Once you do that, you're going to compile secondary resources from the college's databases. Again, there'll be lots of information and resources built into our class to help you do that and help you learn how to use the databases. You should be reading and annotating and making notes just as we did for our readings for the first half of the course. And as you read, you're going to begin to look for emergent themes or ideas until you can start to come up with a question that you want to continue researching. Once you have kind of reached a point where you feel like you start to have an answer to that question, you're going to select your 8 sources that are appropriate to the question and to the rhetorical situation. Remember, we're in a college class doing academic writing, so the sources should all be appropriate to that. Now remember, these should all be articles that you are willing and able to read thoroughly and understand. They shouldn't be too simplistic, but they also shouldn't be, 8 peer-reviewed sources that are each 30 pages long. That sends a really clear signal that you didn't actually read the sources. So once you have your sources, you're going to compile the bibliography. We're going to do this in steps over the next couple of weeks, where you'll be writing sample source entries, you'll get feedback on them, and have a chance to kind of improve and try again. So you'll be writing, reviewing, and revising drafts of individual entries. You're going to complete all the required process work for the best results. Remember, you can use up to 2 of the assigned course readings or video assignments in the final bibliography, but 6 of your entries should be your own original research. Again, you're going to provide citations in MLA formatting for each source. You want to use the citation generators provided within the database. There's videos to show you how to do that. And then make sure that you correct the formatting to make your citations consistent. After you provide the citation, you'll annotate each source by summarizing the article's main claims, identifying its reasons, and providing a description of the evidence used to support them. You'll want to evaluate the methods, strengths, and weaknesses of the source, which includes thinking about the source's rhetorical situation and acknowledging any bias you might find in the source. And then you want to justify the source's usefulness and appropriateness for your project. Now, it's really important that as you're writing the annotations, you are not using any wording or language from the abstract or the source. A lot of times students think that all they have to do is summarize the abstract without reading the source. That is actually falsification. And if you use the language of the abstract, that's plagiarism. Once you have all your entries written, you're going to arrange your sources in a well-formatted alphabetical list. There's videos to help you do that as well. Now, once you have all your sources, then you're going to write your synthesis overview. You are not going to do this first. It's really important that you go through the research process and the annotation writing process before you try to write the overview. Otherwise, you're putting the cart before the horse. So the source synthesis overview is going to serve as the introduction to your annotated bibliography. A list of sources can be confusing for a reader, so your source synthesis overview should serve to provide context for the bibliography that follows. It has 4 required parts. You're going to explain and justify your research question. This means you're going to give a brief introduction to the larger conversation that's happening. You might discuss some of the background articles we read for class or other information that shows why the topic you've picked is exigent. Why is it urgent and necessary to write, research, and talk about this topic right now? You're going to provide a description of your research process, and this should be a true description. If you had a really hard time and you switched topics in the middle or changed your question, you want to talk about those things. Provide a brief overview of your research process, talk about your goals, talk about how you came up with your research strategy, what successes did you have, and what difficulties you ran into. Then you're going to do a brief source synthesis. You need to preview the sources in the bibliography by grouping them into categories based around emergent themes. So this is not a list of 8 random sources. This should be a list of sources that actually talk to one another. Just like with the monster synthesis, you have to make sure that all the sources in your bibliography are listed in a synthesis statement. And you need to make sure that every category that you have, every emergent theme has at least 2 sources. Finally, you're going to finish up with a statement of further work. So this is the first step in your research process, but I don't expect that by the time you're done with your annotated bibliography that you necessarily have all the answers to answer your question. You'll want to talk about what you still need. What gaps are there in your research? If your question has changed or focused itself differently, how is that changing what you need to do next? And most importantly, where do you plan to go next as you look toward the research essay? So it's important to remember that the annotated bibliography is not a traditional academic essay. This does not have paragraphs with transitions. You can use headings and other formatting to make each of the parts and entries clear and legible. There's going to be videos to show you some different options for that. And whatever formatting you use, just make sure it's consistent throughout the document. You'll submit this as a Microsoft Word document or PDF to the correct Dropbox, and be sure that you check your submission for any errors. Make sure that before you submit, you go through the minimum requirements and that you have all of them. Remember, meeting all the minimum requirements guarantees you a B. Having missing requirements ensures that you're going to get a lower grade. So that is quite a lot to go through for an introduction to a single project, but this is a very kind of complex multi-part project. Make sure that you go through the module for this project carefully. Make sure that you're doing all of the homework and process work. It's going to really help you find your sources, analyze your sources, and get started effectively and efficiently. And if you have questions, as always, be sure that you're reaching out either by email, coming to office hours, or you can even use the librarians for assistance.